So welcome to another episode of Original Digital, and this is being shown on Media Village as well as on my own website. And today I'm really excited because I have an old friend. I use old friend in terminology that we're both old and we've been friends for a long time. So it's AJ Vernet. AJ is here. I met AJ, gosh, what is it, maybe
I
almost,
was your sales rep for
yeah, like
Rich
26,
Media.
27 years ago now.
Is
And
that right?
I bought media from you. I bought rich media from you. I bought all kinds of stuff from you. But over the years, we've also worked together in a lot of ways. So, AJ, for the four people who don't know who you are, I want you to tell everybody who you are and what you're up to.
AJ Vernet, COO of OhWaiter currently, a hospitality tech company that does AI ordering, and also a partner at Vernet Inc., which is a consulting service that works with a variety of businesses in the event space and hospitality tech, ad tech, content creation. Kind of been doing it all
Yep.
since the beginning when I started in 1999.
Yep. It's been a
That's
lot of things that have been going on since then.
neither of us wore glasses back then, and we were
No,
much younger and
but I
way
think we
back.
look okay with our glasses.
I don't hate them anymore.
Yeah. So, okay, what I want to talk about, the whole conversation that I've been doing with these interviews is around original digital. So people who have been in the business since it started and since its original conception, as well as people who are original thinkers who bring new ideas into the business. You've qualified as both for many, many years. So let's start with this topic, which is how has things changed? We know the digital media landscape has changed dramatically. The way people work, the way people operate in it, how you get wind of new ideas and new innovations and channels, et cetera. It's all changed in front of our eyes, sometimes as a result of what you or I are doing. So just talk a little bit about like what are the trends you're seeing? What's changed dramatically in your eyes?
The automation, I didn't see how full blown everything would just be automated. And it's funny as I sit here, my mom reminded me I started out in publishing and hospitality. I worked for our family's restaurant, and then I worked at DMG Media, which is an event, and they did like Guitar Magazine, and my mom was running that. And that's really how I got my first taste of advertising. And I remember when I got my first tech job, we would go in door to door convincing people of like, you got to buy our product. This is why it's all online. It's this new thing. And I remember the print people just being like, what's happening to us? Like, what's happening? I remember sitting with a print rep, and she was like, I don't know how to sell this digital thing. And she wasn't much older than you and I were. And I now feel the same way as that woman did 20 something years ago when I started selling online digital. The biggest things I'm seeing and I'm hearing from our colleagues and trends is just like media plans are completely AI driven. I've heard Publicis, I've heard OMD. I don't really sell a lot of media anymore, but the fact is AI is basically creating plans for everybody, and then they're getting checked off by supervisors. And I never thought I'd see that day.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand audience measurement and all that, and the exchanges ramp that up, but it's really just interesting to see how AI and then other tools, platform tools, MarTech tools, audience tools are really have just really streamlined the whole media buying process, which
Yeah.
so and then content. Most for the last 10 years, I've been heavy in content with being one of the partners at brand storytelling and content creation, branded content creation, and all the essences of storytelling. And that too is just next level. In fact, I was just sitting with a few ECDs from a variety of shops, and we were all gawking over the Volvo commercial that was made solely with AI.
Mhm.
Or I was sitting with Nick Cleardoff, and he was explaining how he created using Sora this Toys R Us
Yeah.
content, and like it's finished now, and it's a full blown movie that's all AI prompts. I never really saw that much coming, but those automation tools are going to bring about amazing things.
Yeah.
So one part of the industry I think is kind of dying. The creativity is just going through the roof. And then I was a part of the early days with you. We did some creator stuff, branded content things at a good old digital broadcast group, which ended up at Alloy. Um, and then I did a little Snapchat narrative tour when that was kind of coming up in Snapchat's first renovation. I didn't think creators would have such a big resurgence, but right now, half my day is talking about creator driven content and how they move the index, and then social media e-commerce, right? That's like the new thing. I've been pitched 3 different trade shows that are all launching in Los Angeles, that are all around social media influencers and creators, and when they go on live streams and how much content they can sell in a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's what brands are starting to really invest in. And I find that just fascinating. But it's true. Half the world's flipping through, Instagram or some other site. And at the end of the day, we're buying things, and I'm guilty of it. I bought so many things that are probably sitting around this room that I just was like, that looks interesting. Yes, we need a trampoline for my kids out back. Let's buy it. Oh, it's fold up? Great.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. You're right. The automation element has continued to evolve. It's continued to increase, and it's continued to get woven into every aspect of the business. But it's also really interesting is that, and I just spent a few days with some of the media post folks, and we were talking about how 85% of all the media planning is still done in Excel. And partially the reason is that there's so many different channels and so many different platforms and so much innovation that happens on a regular basis that you can't really standardize how you go about divvying up a budget, where you're going to reach an audience. And you're talking a lot about content and media and the intersection of those two areas, but the ability to plan it, the ability to determine where you're going to put your budget, that still feels very manual and actually very relationship based.
I'm hearing the opposite in some camps.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have to admit that it's like I'm hearing one fragment of it. And then I'm working with a lot of executives who and companies who are trying to like streamline the back ends of the business and juggle remote work and in person, et cetera. So I am in a lot of more conversations about consulting and on how to build your business moving forward and where it's going, right? Like everybody's now panicked because Amazon said everybody's going back to work 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And that's just a trickle down effect. It's happening. We're going to slide somewhere between a 3 to 5 day work week, and
Yeah.
and these companies will follow suit at the end of the day. But so yes, you're right. There's still a large portion of it, and there's that mid tier agencies that Centro, which is not Centro anymore, Tyler Kelly's running. They're really servicing and trying to help automate that mid tier agency, right?
Mhm.
And give them tools. And I think when you and I started, everything was so fragmented. You were using all these different platforms, but now these platforms have gotten so much better that they can give you instant access to information. And I love it. And that's part of the streamline that's happening. I think AI is still so in its infancy, but someone like me, AI scaled me 10x.
Yeah. On the
What
consulting
I can do because of AI now allows me to make a better creative proposal, think through strategies, test theories, and do it in 1/10 the time.
side.
So I see that happen everywhere, you know?
A lot of the companies you talk to, like you said, they're looking for help in identifying a way to mature the go-to-market sales process, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like the companies, don't ever mention any company, but do you feel like companies, they take your advice, they know what to do with it, how to implement it, and they're able to see the results that you envision for them? Or do you feel like that they have hiccups in how they go and implement some of these things?
I think a lot of times, sometimes people can't get out of their own way. So you can put a perfect plan in place, which is, plan's got to be optimized. Good leaders, they run their business like an airline pilot. They make minor corrections all day long until
Yeah.
they get to where they need to go. But 50% of the time, I think they don't execute against what their strategy is because they get scared and panicked and are afraid to follow through.
Based
I,
on what?
Based on real-time fires that they got to fight,
Yeah.
real-time hurdles and obstacles they got to get over. I think remote work, and you and I have talked about this before, has kind of killed some of the instincts. Like you're making decision in like a box,
Yeah.
right? And then you're not out in real time testing it. You're trying some Zooms and stuff, but I think people like Jamie Dimon have said like they get their most inspiration while they're traveling around the globe, meeting customers and people, and like that's those moments of time. And You know, I go back to remembering when you used to travel 6 hours to New York and there was no Wi-Fi, and that was your output time. And that's when you got all your brilliant ideas and you came off the plane and unloaded everything. And, but no, a lot of the companies, I think they start off, it's going well, they hit their first hurdle, and then they panic
Hmm.
and they pivot too fast. And a lot of the theories that I think folks like myself are bringing to the table, you know, in the biz dev role, usually I'm called in now to come up with a go-to-market plan, then essentially go prove that it can work, close the first big deal, you know, create the sales process and cycle, and explain how to go do 100 more of them, and
Hmm.
super fun. And then they have to go execute against that, and then they hit a hurdle, and they go, oh, nope, they didn't want to buy it. It didn't work that way. No,
Yeah,
you have to pivot a tiny bit and figure out how to get over that hurdle and then keep moving forward.
yeah,
I think a lot of days different kind of workforce, and it's a little easier because everything's streamlined, and they don't overcome obstacles like you and I back in the day to
mm,
create it out. Like I started my career going door to door in hospitality sales with City Search.
yeah. I remember.
Um, and like that was hard.
Yeah, because
Uh,
you had to go, you had to go to work through the snow both ways uphill.
yeah. Or how about Rich Media? Nobody believed video. If this guy Joe Apprendi hadn't called and told me I was an idiot for not taking this job with this little company called Clipmart, I never would have gone through the journey with that team, and I never would have met you. I
Yeah,
wouldn't have
and
selling.
and Clipmart was one of those early companies in the rich media space that really defined how the industry was going to perceive evolution and maturity in creative units. I mean, I remember doing a summer project with you guys after I left Kara, and we did that road show, and we talked to I think 40 agencies in 50 days,
But
and it was fun.
do you remember? You wouldn't remember this because you were running the agency, but one of the secrets to my success I learned really on from our friend Peter Crowfoot, who was then at a competitor of mine who taught me rich media. And then, you know, Chip Russo and some of these old legends that are still my friends to this day, but we were all competing against each other,
Yep.
right? Eye Blaster, Point Roll, Motif, myself, and a few others. Creed
Reality.
Pettit. Yeah, Creed Pettit, Aaron Pools, and everything is I would come in and I would get a whiteboard out and I would basically draw ad units with the freestyle team and create what they wanted for a campaign. And then I would go back to my boss and say, we got to build this. This is
Mhm.
what they want to run. And we get the campaign. And I did that over and over again. And I think it was the first time I really learned consultative selling and how to go talk to somebody, figure out what it was they really wanted to do, take that idea, apply it, like some science to it, make it a little better, make sure it could actually happen, and then come back and say, here's reality, let's do it, and then lock out business. And
Mhm.
eventually that was fun because Clipmart was doing $5,000 a month in revenue in entertainment on the West Coast, and we built that into a $16 million business in like 2 years, and was acquired by DoubleClick,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
then Google, and then I took my paycheck and started a content company because that was the rage.
Yeah. Well, remember we had I remember the late night epiphany you and I had about user generated content where we talked for a couple hours and I wrote a manifesto overnight and then we basically launched some business 2 days later.
Yeah, we did a lot of those.
Yeah.
That led me though, that whole journey and seeing branded content inside video ads and seeing video and how sight, sound, and motion really enabled interactivity. That whole tech journey, I got to watch the creative side of the process and how people were trying to make an ad unit like a mousetrap.
Yep.
And better and better and every time. And sometimes mousetrap was just a 30-second video, right? It
Yeah.
was super simple. That led me to content, which when I saw what MySpace was doing, um, what those guys were doing with channels, led you and I to talk about like KTV and Kush TV, and then organically build that
One
business.
charcoal. Forgot
Yeah,
forever.
Sharkle was the one we should have tripled down on.
Yeah.
Literally.
It worked out. It became Vitru. Oracle bought it, but still it could have been. I remember when we had more traffic than YouTube.
Oh my God. I remember what's his name? Vince came over to me, Vince Thompson. He was at AOL. He was at Facebook. He's like, you know anybody that wants to be at YouTube and Facebook? Tony's looking for somebody. And I was like, nah, I'm good over here in rich media.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Anyway, now let me ask you, there's something you were just talking about a second ago. For all these companies
Yeah.
that are new and companies that are growing and everything else, when you're talking to them, what is the difference in your eyes with being able to be successful between going whale hunting on the sales side and finding that one or two big accounts that are actually going to help you to grow versus a whole lot of smaller accounts that maybe over time you can get them to grow and to be, mid-sized, mid-tier types of accounts? Like when you're talking to a brand new company, where do you recommend they start to be successful?
Both simultaneously. Like the key to I think being successful, like when we started OhWaiter, we had to go mom and pop, right? We had to go door to door, single units. We had to get our teeth kicked in. We had to hear every objection. You need all that info. That data is so key into building. But then you eventually say, hey, the mom and pops, the ones, they're harder actually than mid-market. And you jump up to mid-market and you start building your funnel with, all those mid-tier brands, retail shops, things like that. And then you realize, wow, there's way more infrastructure. But if I jump one more level, it's going to take me a year to close a deal. But that deal is going to be 1,000, 2,000 times bigger than any more. But you have to do them all three simultaneously, in my opinion, because the sales cycle time is drastically longer at the top, but it's way more lucrative. And you can't put all your eggs in that basket, but you don't learn as fast as you do mid-market and lower market.
So you think it's okay to take your lumps on that smaller market, lower market tier type of business so that you can get your proof of concept, that you can get some stability in the offering, and then you can utilize that, the long-term selling against a larger account?
Yeah, and paying very close attention to what the hurdles are.
Okay.
The art of, I think so many people forget the art of the pitch is so key. You're building a story. You're trying to build rapport and you're building a story. And what you learn at the bottom of the funnel is like all the little nuances that are important for the operator or the brand, or right. And then as you're building that story, your goal is to start to like lay out the pieces. It needs to be feasible, right? And the momentum while checking in with the person you're selling to. So I think if you go straight to hardcore enterprise, you'll get it won't be as successful if you just ladder up. You need to start them all at the same time, but like you really need to spend 6 months at the bottom trying to understand everything so that you have all the answers, or at least 90% of them. You're not gonna, and then what gets really exciting is when you're selling like a platform, or you're selling a solution. Like I worked at Zype for a long time and I built this OTT solution, and we had 60% of the product done. The other 40 need to be finished off. And so we followed that same one. We went door to door for 9 months. We started to build up some customer base. And along the way, one of the smart guys would be like, I need this product. I need it to crunch data like this. I need a playlist. I need this coded. I need a translator. I need a paywall. And we started to add those in priority by what we heard.
Right.
Customers. And then the minute we went up to like a Hearst or an Amazon or somebody, they were like, oh, I need these other 20 things. And it takes 6 months to build that, but we were still able to sell down here. And then we start building these product-led growth. And by the time you get up to the tier 1 enterprise, you know enough to be super dangerous. And if you're really polite and you find the right person on the other end that wants to work with you, which is 95% of the sales sometimes, besides your product, then you can close those big deals. And that's what a lot of people miss, is they think, I've got a great idea. I know all the answers already. I'm just going to go pitch Target. And they do. A lot of people do this. Or Walmart. I'm in one now that's pitching Walmart, and they're like, come back in like 5 years.
Yeah.
You know a little more.
Well, it's funny because there's a lot of listening involved in that. What you said earlier, it's a consultative selling process. You have to listen a lot. You have to come with a thesis or a hypothesis about what it is you're going to sell and what you think the impact of it is going to be. But you ultimately do have to listen to what the customers are saying back to you, whether it's the small customers who are saying, we're going to get started right now, and here's what is working, here's what's not working, or it's listening to the enterprise client up the top who's going to say, these are the absolute requirements from a product development perspective I have before I can even consider bringing you in the door.
Bingo. And these are the things I want you to do. And then you have to like be the type of team that's like, we're going to get that done because we really want to be in business with you. Right? Like the listening, that is the reason I told you the freestyle example is because that's how I won your team over. Is by collaborating with them and trying to give them some degree of what they want instead of saying, just shove everything into the box that I have over here. It
Yeah.
doesn't work. And then honestly, the other art of sales, I think a lot of people forget is sales is a people job, right? I like people. If you're genuinely interested in them, if you genuinely like what you do and how you're doing it, like you're gonna shine.
Yeah.
So if you're just super transactional and you have the best product, sure, you're gonna win sometimes, but I've never had like the Maserati of a product. I always had to build it the tough way, which I love.
Now, do you think it's harder to do that art of the sell in today's world than it was even just 10 years ago?
I think it's harder to get to people,
Yeah.
like the pandemic, I launched the Adway, a company I invested in, which does video on the side of cars. It's actually being wildly successful right now. It's launching in Dubai. It's going to launch in Miami. Their biggest problem was the out-of-home market super scattered. Everybody was locked up, and they launched during the pandemic.
When
I
nobody
think
was outside.
nobody was out. Well, yeah, people were outside at some point, right? But
Right. But not in cities.
nobody could, yeah, see the product and everything. I think we did 500 meetings in 2 years.
Mhm.
Like agencies, Kinetic, our friends, direct a brand. And while we had some modest tests and successes, like they couldn't really get in front of people and like show the product. Right. And so I think that hindered it. And I think a lot of people launched their careers and augmented to Zoom because we're all remote work. Look at you and me. We used to
Yep.
be in the office. We used to have a proper meeting, a lunch and learn, all that. It's just
Once a
changed.
while.
And
Yep.
some of it's great.
Yeah.
I love the efficiencies of it, but I'm finding that, and this goes like with Adway and some of these others, like the more you can get in person and physically show something and see their demeanor and all that, it helps. It helps your case long term.
Well, I think there's a lot of value now where you can do these types of initial meetings on a Zoom or do them on a Google Meet,
Yeah.
or do them on WebEx. And you're able to have that initial conversation to qualify the opportunity. And then you try to meet in person and build that relationship. And I think that's kind of like, I always think about you and I think about Pete Crowfoot as well, too, because the two of you guys, we ended up being friends fast. And I think it was because when we first started talking about stuff, we always tried to figure out what was interesting to us as individuals and then
Yeah.
how it overlapped. And then we would figure out how to turn it into business. And it was never just this transaction, like you said, transactional way of saying, I have this, do you want to buy it? It was always like, tell me what you're interested in. Like, let's figure out where there's commonalities there. And then if that morphs into business, cool. If not, hey, maybe we'll still end up being friends, maybe we won't be, we'll figure it all out. But that personal contact, that personal relationship, the world still needs both. And I think actually the people who are successful these days still do both very, very well.
Yeah. And you said it like twice, actually, listening.
Yeah.
You got to be able to hear what they're saying. And then you got to have something that you can apply and come back and say, well, Corey, I heard this. Like I remember our friend Joe Epstein once, he was like, I'm having a problem doing this. And we were friends and he was not really a client. And then I said, well, this is how you solve it. And he's like, you're kidding me. And literally next day, I think I had like 5 Sony campaigns. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
And and that was, just took one success and went to Vladimir over and JP over at Universal and Doug Neal. And eventually I think one person from Point Roll came up to me at like an iMedia conference and was like, you think you're such hot shit? And I'm like, nope, I'm just creatively outselling you. And I had every studio doing rich media with DoubleClick that year.
Yep.
I had them on lockdown.
And I think I know who that person was. Well, he'll remain nameless, but I can see that coming out of his mouth. So
We're actually good friends
yeah.
today. Does it? Yeah. I think selling is an art. I think a lot of people don't do the consultative selling, and I get that in every spam call that I get, and every time somebody tries to bait me from LinkedIn into a call, which I do, and then they just go right into the pitch, and they're not like listening.
Yeah.
There's automated sales funnels, which are needed. I'm guilty. I've used them. BDRs that are just trying to score points for a number of meetings and things like that.
Yep.
But the truly, and small deals will be done that way all day long. Like I can't say that those aren't super effective to get the ones and twos, but the truly big deals,
Yeah.
like Rembrandt's going to do in the marketplace,
Yep.
with like a battery company or something where you're infusing it into all their videos for the rest of the year across all YouTube. Like those deals take time and they take a lot of like, you got to find pain points.
Yeah.
Wherever there's pain, there's a deal to be done.
Well, and actually, as we start to get to the end of this conversation, which we'll end up having to keep going at some point, but that's a good piece of advice is try to figure out what people's pain is, listen to them and get to know them, get to know their business, right? Like that's what, if you were going to talk to somebody who's coming into the business now and you want to teach them what the art of the sell is that the basic foundation from which to start?
Yeah. Because a lot of people don't listen. What they're trying to do is just hit all their talking points.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's guilty of it. I'm guilty of it once in a while. I want to get through my deck I've created, which is why a guy named Sean Downey taught me the most valuable thing. He's like,
Mhm.
don't open the deck, show the
Yeah.
cover side, and then just talk like you and I are doing
Yeah.
and hear, and then talk back. A lot of people forget that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really interesting because it is that simple.
I've never heard that, but he's right. And I remember Sean, because I haven't talked to him in many, many years, but he's right. And I do the same trick that I've never thought about. Like I have a deck sitting there that I had for a phone call earlier today. I don't get past the first page.
You don't need to. Yeah, maybe you need to show a visual or two, right? As you're building your points. But if you're really just talking to somebody and you're like, what's your problem? Like, I'm working a lot in hospitality and hotels and the golf resort space and in retail. And a lot of them are converging and bringing in technology and advertising and starting to take advantage of their on-prem solutions for music and ads and content and all these things that they've not done. And it's really interesting because this business is very much like when you and I started digital.
Yeah.
The pandemic just made it's forced to change.
Yeah.
We're going to be living in very much like a Jetsons type world scenario in 5 years in restaurants.
Yeah.
Everything is going to be automated to some degree. And then there will be the very personal places that are like, we're against automation, and that's a very high price ticket commodity that you're going to have. But it's really interesting. The head of Focus, the CEO of Focus Brands, is one of the largest in the world, was like, in 5 years, 80% of my operations are going to be automated, some form or another. So,
Yeah.
and they're going to take advantage of people that are walking in to sit down and ordering and online. So it's really interesting. That landscape I'm having a lot of fun playing in it, because there's so much change. There's old school incumbents and which I equate to like the print people, and they're doing things in an archaic way, and they've done it for 30 years. And if you ever talk to my uncle, he'd be like, "We're not changing how we're doing things," and it's just that's the restaurants run this way, but the
Yeah.
margins are getting squeezed, and they have no choice but to do it. And we're seeing a lot of our ad tech community move over into this space, like a lot of people,
I think I'm
because
allergic to change. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, bless you, buddy.
Yeah.
um, and then the creator community. I see that rise of Maker Studio and Full Screen and all of them, and those are all gone. Those companies are all gone. But guess what? There's a whole nother wave of this creator economy that's just coming now, fast and furious, and it'll be the social e-commerce part and some other things.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think there's a lot of, once again, it's maturity. It's a maturity for these channels, which over the next 2 years turns them into real viable, scalable businesses. So should be
Yeah,
fun.
and
Cool.
it's fun. The equation is still always the same though. You got to figure out how to go to market. You got to figure out how to close the deal. You got to keep tweaking until you get there, and then once you do it, you try and create a repeatable process. Um, and that's the fun part.
Right on. Well, thanks, AJ. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, buddy. Always
How can anybody get a hold of you if they need to?
agentvernet@gmail.com.
All right.
LinkedIn.
All
Thanks,
right.
bud.
You got it.